It took about 6 years before I actually stepped up in the courtroom and said, I have a problem and I would actually like help this time around. So a good year of my life was forced into sobriety, but I was ready at that point. Yeah. But at that point, I knew I needed to move forward, and my whole life changed and started going to a different way. I went back to film school, graduated, sobered up, a strong, creative, confident, resilient woman at this point in my life.
One of my biggest motivators to continue to grow in financial success, but also relationship success and growth and opportunity is for the benefit of others. I mean, my wife and I have had a philosophy on give until it hurts since the time we've been together, which means we've given even when we don't have to give. And often we give to the point that we feel it because it is more meaningful for us, because it's not about just protecting our own. It's about making sure that everyone gets to experience what we have. Welcome back, everybody, to Flipping the Lid. You know what we do here by now. And yes, I start almost every show that same way, but it's true. It's because we are normalizing the conversations that need to be had. We're talking often with some of the most impactful, influential folks in the world, and we're talking about the journey of getting to where they are, as well as who they are and what they do. But what always makes this show a perfect example of what's possible is when people are willing to go there, have discussions, and have stories of resilience and overcoming challenges that ultimately allow that it's not just about the highlight reel. Today, our guest is no different. We have Tamara Thompson here. She's the CEO and founder of Broadcast Your Authority. And in the time that I've gotten to know her, she has plenty of stories. There are definitely things that she's had to move through, overcome, and understand about herself. But the more she's done so, the more impactful she becomes. The journey that she's on today, running Broadcast Your Authority through podcasts, is getting people exposure, clients, opportunities, building and deepening relationships and community, all through the power of telling good stories, having good conversations, and doing so in an ethical and scalable way. The way she does it, how she does it, and the people she attracts is just a testament to who she is. Tamara, I am so excited to have you here today.
I'm grateful to be here. Thanks for having me, Brian.
Well, the only question I ask every guest, outside of the quick intro, the only question I ask every guest on the show is, who are you in your words?
My words. A strong, creative, confident, resilient woman at this point in my life. I was very much a shy, awkward girl growing up and went through a lot of things that I'm sure we'll dive into today. And I'm just grateful for the woman I'm becoming.
Yeah, I would suggest also for the woman that you already are and the one you continue to become. You know, I think it's been really fun, actually, for me in the very short period of time that we've known each other, that you have shared quite a bit of stories around the things that have happened to you. And I appreciate the perspective. I appreciate the resiliency, and I appreciate your ability to see the contrast of before and where you are today. You know, the words that you chose very quickly to answer who you were, which, by the way, I want to honor you, because there's a lot of people when I ask that question who tell me what they do, and you actually answered it by telling me who you are in very clear, very strong, very tangible words that you identify with, that are a representation of who you are. And so you talk about who you're becoming. Who do you believe you were before you are today?
Before today, like yesterday, or
well, I guess like before you use the terms that you use today that you identify with, the strong, capable, resilient, confident.
So there were a lot of things that went on in my younger years, my younger self, let's say elementary school, growing up. I grew up in a great family. My family always provided. My mom was always protective. She's very domineering mother, but always took care of us, always made sure we had everything what we want. But there was a control aspect within the household. So my brother and I, realizing that in later lives after growing up and moving out, we were able to be ourselves and select certain things that we would like to do, like sports and things like that. But we were both very awkward kids, and we were socially awkward. And, but I also had other things going on in my life and my personality and my sexuality that were really, I was fighting growing up, and being able to grow into a strong woman and try to explain to someone first, my sexuality was the first point of fighting those battles, right? Because when I was younger, it wasn't as accepted to be, a gay woman or lesbian. And when I did finally come out, there was a very interesting conversation with my mother where she turned around in that moment crying, saying, "Why didn't you feel like you could tell me?" I was like, because I didn't feel like it was it's not like I wanted to be this way, but I knew I was this way since I was in kindergarten. And so I knew what my feelings were. But it was just that fact of hiding it and hiding my first relationship. And then a lot of things going on that really formulated like these thought process of just being awkward. I'd have crushes on women, and how do you try to show somebody in junior high school that you like them, because it's probably not accepted in most scenarios. And so those were a lot of things that I had to battle to overcome. But then when I did finally come out at age 25, I'm 44 now, I did start to feel a little bit more free, a little bit more confident. I was accepted, but I still also saw the points of people not accepting it fully, from best friends from high school coming in, to being extremely close to backing off, all of them asking, did you have a crush on me? I'm like, do you have a crush on every boy that comes into your life? I'm like, I'm your friend. Right. And so it was just like these different things that I was overcoming. And those social awkward moments started to push me into other things. And then where my life kind of turned into this turmoil point is after I came out. And even before I came out, I wanted to connect with other people that I felt like could understand what I was hiding at that point. And so I went out to the gay bars and things like that. And it was a very interesting formation of my life that's very different today. But I really turned to alcohol, and I turned to bars, gay bars specifically, because I wanted to feel like I was being heard, seen, and I could be myself. But it was literally like cheers. People walked in, hey, Cliff, hey, Norm, hey, Tamara. And I felt like I was the life of the party. I loved that at that point. But then I also, felt like the people that I was meeting were a lot on the surface, right? So you're just going out, you're having a good time, you're having a drink. I never felt like I really connected deeply with the way I do with people now, especially on the business side, entrepreneurial side, CEO side, impact side. That stuff joins me up now. Whereas back then I wasn't quite clear, but I knew that I felt like I could talk to these people, but it was always surface. So I was very socially awkward.
What's interesting is, in our world, and we joke about this often, whether it's in our communities or masterminds, the people that we work with, like we kind of joke that we attract highly intelligent, highly emotionally intelligent individuals who have often felt like the only one in many rooms they walk into, right? We're kind of like the land of misfit toys. And so this concept of being socially awkward, I not only identify with, but I know that it's something that anyone who doesn't feel seen and understood, who doesn't feel connected, who doesn't feel safe or protected can experience, right? And in particular, I'm 39, you're 44, so we're in the same age range. And again, to your point exactly, if you look at the times with which and how we grew up, it was not often accepted or promoted to fully own who you are, up to and especially including sexuality. And so, it's interesting that the way you describe it, I've got many, many, many friends that I've been and had the privilege of hearing their coming out stories and experiences. And it's fascinating to me because there are people that just accept it. And it's like, well, yeah, of course, I love you. I've always known, like, thank you for finally telling me, right? Like no shame, no gaslighting. There's sometimes an expectation or gaslighting, like what you sort of described with your mom. It's like, well, how come you didn't feel comfortable enough to tell me? Like it was something that she could have changed or that would determine different in your own path. And it seems like they're kind of all scattered behind this lack of really knowing, am I going to be okay on the other side of coming out?
I think it was just more like, am I going to be accepted? Because you don't want to feel a loss of one, the people that love you from your family, two, your friends. I had already experienced losing friendships starting at age 18 when I tried to come out. So I held it back in for more years. Of course, everybody in my phone that I started meeting, of course, knew I was gay at that point. But it really wasn't one of those things where I wanted to come out to my family at that point. And when I did come out, I had this opportunity that I knew somebody that came into my life that I hadn't seen in 10 years actually outed me. And I knew that he was going to do it. It was a cousin of mine that came in to visit from town, who was a very loudmouth individual. that ended up doing some other shady things along the way as well after he found out I was gay. And I don't speak to this gentleman anymore, this cousin of mine. But, what I learned from the experience is like, I told myself, this is my out. Like literally, this is my outing because he is going to tell everybody. Right. And he did. And it just was a pattern. We went out. He came into town when I lived in Seattle, Washington. We went out to an Irish pub and we were just driving down to Seattle. And he literally was like, so who does my cousin like to hang out with? The jocks, the preps, the alternatives, Seattle grunge.
Yeah.
I was like, what do you think about the gays? And he was like, he just starts kind of stopping. And then he's like, my cousin is not gay. I was like, your cousin is very gay. And I was like, you haven't spoken to me in about 10 years and you really don't know who I am. And so he was just like, and I was like, I know it. He's going to say it. He's going to tell my mom. Boom. That evening after he drove me back, he told my mom. The next morning was the conversation with my mother. My mom called my dad. He called his father, which is my mom's brother. And then all these, it was just like a roll. I was boom, domino effect. I was like, okay, I had somebody do it for me. So I didn't have to do the hard work. I just had to confront and, talk to my mom after that positioning, which I was actually grateful for it. Cause I was like, you know what? He's got a big mouth. He's going to do this for me. And I had a feeling my intuition was like, he's just going to tell the world. And he did. And that just opened up the rest of the doors and everything with the family. And everybody was, I think in shock, but at the same time, they weren't disowning me, which I was grateful for. And so that was kind of that part of it. Yeah. And so it was interesting.
Well, so what you just did was confirm the third category that was most common that I drew a blank on when I was giving the examples, which is, or they are outed by someone, right? and that was really what happened to you.
I was kind of hoping that would happen.
Yeah.
Easier on me.
Because to your point, that took to having to have the conversation directly or bring it up or initiate it. Yeah. It was just like, okay, well, it's already out there. Like now I literally
walked in that room with my mom and I was like, she knows.
Oh, yeah.
I was literally like, she knows. And, but I was like, I knew it. I knew he was going to do that. And I was like, thank you in a way, and so it was very interesting to go, but I felt better about it because then I could step into that a little bit more confidence of myself. But those years of my life were a little bit of a turmoil, though, dealing with the sexuality, not very happy with my career path at the time. I was actually dumped by my first love that was hidden for the first few years. And the very next day after that dump, I was actually hit by a car. And that was hard because that was before I actually came out. So backtracking a little bit of things that I was dealing with. So the car
accident happened before you came out?
Before I came out. Okay. That was about 23, I believe. And so I was in the fitness industry. So I'm going to give a little backstory here. So I was in the fitness industry, was hit by a car and was kind of out of commission for a bit. So I couldn't do personal training anymore. And I started feeling like a fraud because I was like gaining weight. Yeah. I was like, I cannot be in this industry. I'm not happy in this industry. I need to do something about it. But what happened through that process was what turned me into a very resilient person. So going through depression, hiding it, drinking, going to the bars like Cheers, led into this path spiral. And I was actually more of like a goody two-shoe growing up. I didn't even drink, do drugs, alcohol, anything. I didn't even really drink much until I was probably about 24 after this happened. And it took about 6 years of just the spiral, drinking, depression piece of it. Like, where am I going with my life? What am I meant to do? Like I was like, it's not this fitness journey thing. And YouTube came out and I started getting really fascinated with YouTube and running around with cameras and things like that. But I went through this series of alcohol addiction. And so I'm doing so funny with cameras and, thought I was funny or whatever, uploading videos, things like that. So the whole story like ends up forming into what we do today.
Completely. Yeah.
And, but for about 4 years, I did it as a hobby. And then my friends and family came back and said, why don't you go back to college again or schooling or training so that you could actually do something in video or filmmaking because you're so passionate about this YouTube thing. I was like, oh, it's just a hobby because people are making silly cat videos or parkour videos or whatever. Like, how can you utilize this to build a business or a career at that point? And then finally I was like, all right, let's do it. Like, I'm going to go back to school. So I went back to school at the Seattle Art Institute for filmmaking in my late 20s. And through that process, I was still drinking and spiraling into different things, drinking and driving quite often, which led into multiple offenses of DUIs, literally being pulled over, thrown in jail. And there got to be a point where I was in and out of the jail system quite often, as was put away for a while, as well as dealt with a lot of court issues.
Yeah.
And it took a while to realize and actually step up and say, I have a problem. It took about 6 years before I actually stepped up in the courtroom and said, I have a problem and I would actually like help this time around. And I won't dive into all of that. You can ask some of the questions about what that happened, but I did go away to jail for 3 months. And then the other 9 months I was put on house arrest. So a good year of my life was forced into sobriety, but I was ready at that point. Yeah. And I removed everyone in my life that was a surface colleague, friend, bar buddy. And I had gone to a treatment center, which helped me. A woman, she suggested to read the 4 Agreements. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, this is a really short book, but this is a really good book. And so I was like, okay. She was like, wake up every day and live by these 4 agreements. If you realize that you just took something personally, or if you made an assumption, step back. And, always do your best and be impeccable to your word. Mm-hmm. So I just started to live by those agreements, and I would start catching myself because I would be angry at things and decisions I made. But at that point, I knew I needed to move forward, and my whole life changed and started going to a different way. I went back to film school, graduated, sobered up. I sobered up when I was 30 years old. So this December, I'll have 14 years. 14
Good for
years.
you.
Yeah, so December 20th. And
Good for you.
5 days before Christmas. It was a very crazy year. Turning down everyone, trying to go out on New Year's. But I just decided to do that because I was like, if I don't change now, I'm going to either hurt myself or somebody else, not on purpose. And gratefully, with all the drunk driving, the DUIs and things like that, I never physically hurt anybody or a vehicle or things like that. And so I'm grateful for that experience. I wouldn't take any of it back. It literally shoved me into a jail with a lot of other women that were coming down off meth, that were coming out of insane asylums. There were a lot of things going on where that was the point I was in the best shape of my life.
Wow.
I was like wall sits, lunges,
you just trained all
dips.
the time. Yeah,
I did. And they actually felt like they didn't. I'm 5'9", so I'm fairly tall. And so they knew I'd worked in the fitness industry, and they saw me as a tough individual. They saw me as a kind person though, because I would stand up for other women in there. And there's been some crazy stories that were in there. But after I was released from that experience and going through other things that I had to deal with the courtrooms and the resilience on that side, even on the financial standpoint, that's a lot of stuff to deal with.
That's a lot.
And it was interesting because when I came out of that experience and did get into entrepreneurship and business, that's why I say to people, whenever they're like, oh, how do you get through these challenges in business? I'm like, it's a piece of cake. I'm like, this is just a challenge that's going to pass. And because nothing really hit as hard as that as my rock bottom. Yeah. For me, everybody's rock bottoms are different.
Totally.
But that was mine. And I was like, I'm going to surpass and come out of this a much bigger and better and stronger person, and understand that, there's so many different challenges in life. So
you crammed so much into that answer. You're right. I am going to have to go back and ask some components of questions.
I get into it so much.
I loved it. I loved it because here's the reality. You also just compressed a bunch of the topics that ultimately I wanted to make sure that we could cover even at a high level today. Mm-hmm. And now we can just pick and choose the areas that we want to be a little more granular.
I was like, because there's so much more to my story.
Well, and there is, and we're going to get to that as well. Right. So one thing that I wanted to ask, and I think there's layers to this question. One of the things that we had talked about, right, is that when we are in a position that we decide that we aren't seen and understood and connected, we typically protect ourselves, right? There's this layer of armor, and you even talked about it. It's like I tried to come out at 18. I didn't come out fully until I was almost 25, and then I just did. But the same thing was true at different layers in your story, right? There were different layers that you were protecting yourself or operating from a protective energy, and then all of a sudden you get through it and you can release and move on. So that's, I think, what I'd like to focus on for the moment is, what did those transitionary periods look like from the time that you decided that I'm going to fully own and come out? How did you feel on the other side? Did you feel more free, more accepted? I don't want to put words into your mouth, but the same thing, pre and post alcoholism, pre and post jail. Like, what were the impacts of stepping into and fully owning those components of your story?
Honestly, I just felt relieved. So yeah, that moment with mom was probably the one that I was like dreading the most.
Yeah.
I was like, oh gosh, I'm like, because she's strong, she's dominant, she's into vanity, she's just, she's judgmental. I mean, she's my mom. I love her no matter what. She's got great traits too, but she's a very strong person. But I've learned a lot of things from her that have also helped me,
I'm sure,
become a strong woman. And so the relief on that part, the relief on the coming out was probably the biggest thing. I was like, burden off of that.
Yep.
My cousin Mark just spilled the beans. Yeah. I'm like, thank you, Mark. And then from the going into the court system story. So that was over a course of 6 years. Okay. So that's a whole story in itself. Multiple DUIs, coming out, being called the Queen of Miracles in the courtroom. And the Queen of Negotiation. So I love negotiation. And this was one of the things that helped me go into negotiation in business later on in life. But there was a scenario where one of the DUIs literally was dropped more for, like you could get like a freebie. It was like a slap on the hand kind of thing. Washington State at the time was one of the biggest. It was like in the top 3 worst places to get a DUI back in the day. Probably still in the top 3. And so we went in through the first one, they kind of removed this one. But what happened was they tried for a case. So the first one that happened didn't come through the court system till the second in time because they were so close back to back and being pulled over. Okay. So trying to explain that to everybody is a little bit different. But so like I'm being charged for something that the first one in time hasn't fully come through yet. So there was a lot of scenarios that we were working with that we kind of went through, kind of got slapped on the wrist. That the second one in time then was put as the first, and then the first as the second. And it's hard to explain it. I go through, I get pulled over again. So the third one comes in, and basically there was like a miracle in the room. Like that day I came in, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get locked away for at least a year. I'm like, this is what's going to happen. I'm already accepted it. I was like, sorry, friends, family, like I have a problem. I know it. We come into the courtroom, and all of a sudden there was this scenario where they're like, well, this cop was actually fired for fraudulent claims. And now this meaning that his statement that he smelled alcohol on you is no longer valid. We are dropping your case. Miracle. There is the one miracle. So that was in 2000, about 3 years before I really sobered up. Then I get pulled over again and again. And I laugh about it because I was like, man, I'm really stupid. Well, I was like, I just got a miracle, like slap on the wrist. Like, oh, I can just keep drinking it. Let's keep going. Yeah. So that one came through. And then we get pulled back in through some other processes. And then all of a sudden I get to another courthouse. And at that point, I'm like, freaking A, I have a problem. This is ridiculous. I was like, and at this point I'd gone back to school. So I was starting to get better with things, and I wasn't going out as much, but I was, had a great job at the time. I was going to school for filmmaking and all these things going. I was actually going to AA. I was doing this treatment. I was going to programs. I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing on the slip, like in that frame. And so then I turn around and do it again. I actually got into a program.
At least you're consistent. I mean,
it's never been a problem. The consistency factor, I always tell people it's great to be consistent in life and business. And so this last one came about, and I was like, holy crap, I am going to go away this time. I've just made a big mistake. And I got into the courtroom, and my attorney at the time was like, I just don't know, like, how to help you at this point other than what I can do. So we go into this courtroom, and I myself decided to put together all this information. I was like, I did the research. I love market research. So did the research, and I saw not at this specific county or jailhouse, but I saw in this one place that was probably about 30 minutes out from the city that they did this program called work release. And I was like, okay, I don't want to be put away forever. I'm going to pitch it. And I was like talking to everybody in my group and my treatment center and my attorney. They're like, they're not going to accept this. That's not within that jail system. Yeah. I was like, I'm going to try. I was like, let me propose this. He's like, you're crazy. And I was like, I've been told that. Yes. And so what I did is I put together everything that I was working for, that I was, congruent or consistent with my, my treatment. I was going to meetings. I was in school. I brought my grades. I was getting straight A's. Yes, I made a mistake. And this is, a few months down the line, because they don't put you into the court, too soon after that. Right. So it was months down the line from when it happened. And I wanted to show the judge that I was changing and trying for the better, because I literally this time wanted to step up in the courtroom, and because all the other times I was just quiet. Yeah. And my attorney's like, just let me talk. Okay. I was like, okay. I was like, let me talk this time. So I stood up in the courtroom. And I laid it all out. I was like, I know I have a problem. I'm a what you guys call a menace to society at this point. You can see I have multiple experiences on my record that seem to slide through. And I was like, I want you to know I am working at this time. I know I have a problem. I don't want to hurt myself, my family, or anybody at this point. And I would like the opportunity to present to go to this program out here with work release at this other jail system that's not a part of your court system. And I'm like, I'll cover it. Whatever it is, I'll work for it. And the guy literally looks at me he's like, give me your paperwork. So he looks through everything, my grades, my slips, everything. He looks up at me. He looks down, he looks back up at me and looks down. And he's like, Miss Thompson, I don't think anyone has ever come into this courtroom requesting anything different. He's like, that shows some balls, really. Yeah. And he looks down. It literally takes a couple minutes. I feel like it was 10 minutes, but it's probably 2. Yeah. And we're just sweating, and my mom's in the back of the courtroom, and I was like, you don't know unless you try. And I'm like, I'm always like that. I'm like, take a risk. I'm very much a risk taker, usually calculated risks at this point in life. And he just said, you know what? I'm going to let you do this. I'm going to sign this off. You're going to pay the fees for this. And if you do not comply with this, and you do not if you come back to that, we'll let you go to work 3 days a week. We'll release you to keep your job and your school efforts to help you stay on track, so you don't have to miss them. He's like, if you neglect to do anything in compliance, you will be thrown away for a year plus. We will just automatically take it away. I said,
sign me up.
So I'm like, I'm in. I'm like, thank you. And everyone just my attorney is like jaw drop. And everyone's like, what the heck just happened? And he was like, you're the first person in this courtroom to ever do anything like this. He's like, I hope you feel proud. And I was like, I'm so grateful right now, sir. And everyone just walked out silent. Right. So that fast forward to that part, that negotiation in the courtroom allowed me to become stronger in other areas of my life later. So 100%. It was very interesting.
Well, I mean, what's interesting is obviously the whole point of that question was really this idea of being seen and understood. And to do that,
we've got heard me that day.
That's what I'm saying. There's an element of we have to be a level of awareness to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. And then we have to be able to own our voice, own our stories, own our truth, own our power. Right. And that's not always super easy to do. Mm-hmm. But what you also just articulated is your creativity, your problem solving, your ability to wonder and ask the what if questions, to explore possibility beyond just because it's done this way or has been always. Mm-hmm. And I would suggest that those are all skill sets that obviously feed your entrepreneurial journey. Oh, yes. But to the point of what you had talked about, even as it relates to how business is easy,
Mhm.
At that point in your journey, you'd already been through a lot, overcome a car accident, multiple situations with DUIs and court cases. And like, it's literally what do I have to lose? I'm
That's
if I
exactly
do
what it was.
nothing, I'm going away. If I do something, I'm likely still going away, but
At
I
least I
might
tried.
get something different.
Yeah.
And that's the layer that not many people go to in many areas of life, right?
Mhm.
Whether their back is against the wall in a courtroom or their back is against the wall because they can't generate enough revenue in their business, right? It's about how do we adapt? How do we create? How do we build? And how do we advocate for ourselves in a way that's clearly communicated? You obviously did that in that moment. And you've had multiple experiences that shaped into that. I do have to go back and ask just one question. And it is specifically connected to the fact that I don't have many people sit in that chair that have been hit by a car or run over. Clearly, that's a part of my story. And so I instead of having you tell the story of what happened specifically, what I would rather focus on for the moment in this portion of the question is, if you had to identify one or two critical ahas, key lessons, breakthroughs, shifts of perspective, however you define it, that are a direct result of the car accident, what do you think those are?
It's a great question. So, it's kind of interesting because what happened then, so I was dumped by my first love, hit by a car the very next day. It was a hit and run. I was knocked out for about 27 hours.
Okay, wow.
And when it came to, I was not in a very good frame of mind anyways, because I was just dumped. I'm not out. And that year I gained about 85 pounds that year.
Oh, wow.
And that cycle journey of weight gain it came back later in life, recently, actually. And we were talking about this off camera, which I'm now back into the health journey.
Kicking ass again, yeah.
And so what happened from there was, that was a different one though. So went in and gained about 85 pounds in 1 year. Was very unhappy with myself. I think the aha moment from that though was like, I have what it takes to go through something hard, deal with it in my own way, with support from others and, whoever was around me at that time. A lot of people were helpful during that time because they're like, oh, you're hit by a car, but none of them knew I was dumped. It was hard other than the people that I talked to in the bars.
Right.
And so leading into later in life though, like it helped me. I got into another health kick journey and I actually I was probably the best shape of my life when I was 27. So that happened when I was 24, 27, super fit. Started actually finding things in the entrepreneurial journey, found entrepreneurial events, things like that. I think the biggest thing I learned from that though was that moving through there, I found my way home.
Yeah.
Like and that happens in any scenario. We all have these life-changing events. If it's being hit by a car where we have to deal with a healing process, like not just healing like our body, but our mind, our mental state, and then going through on that. So it took me a while to heal on that, but I was also diving into trying to heal, but I was also becoming an alcoholic. So it was very much a double whammy during that time. But I did start getting on a health kick again, even though I was drinking alcohol. I was starting to work out again and worked out twice a day. And I was like dieting and, later on, it was just a health lifestyle change.
Right. Well, I mean, I think, again, it's, for many people in situations, you call it your rock bottom, but there's rock bottoms. And then there's also moments that I think test and shape our relationship with mortality. Right. And I think that you've had
journey.
Right. You've had multiple of those in your life.
And I'll continue to have them.
Of course you will.
Different, because you're constantly up leveling yourself as a person, life and business. And I'm one of those people.
I know you do. I know.
I dive in and I used to dive in more in the beginning, like let's just do it. Take action. I don't care. And then I was like, okay, wait, 'cause there'd be moments in life I'm like, a mentor of mine way back in the day was like, say yes to success. Right. And then I got to a point where I had another mentor that was like, say no to the things that don't serve you. Yeah. And I was like, that's a better option at this point. Yeah. So it's like, I had that mentality to take risks and go after things. And these stories helped me in that way. And then later in life, I was like, I love challenges. I love to take risks, but they have to be very much calculated.
No, they've got to be calculated. You, in the time I've known you, I witnessed, I had the privilege, obviously, of coming up and being a guest on your show in Vegas. We'll talk a little bit.
Grateful to have you there.
Thank you. And I, you do a really phenomenal job. We'll talk about that stuff a little bit later. But what I picked up on in this subtlety of just witnessing you and then hearing even the way you describe certain stories today, you seemingly have always been a protector of others and not just yourself.
Yes.
And there's this deeper layer of advocacy that is obvious in the way that you want to show up for others, maybe sometimes even to the expense of yourself. But what I'm, you referenced some moments in jail, for example, that you were watching out for other women. And we don't need to go there. But what I would like to understand is where did this protector mentality and this desire and drive to advocate for others come from for you?
Gosh, I would probably say that even goes back way earlier in life. I'm making this assumption, but this is what I think it came from. So in middle school, before I came out, other things, like I was saying, it's hard to get people's attention when you have a crush, right? So one of the things I did, which is very funny to this day, because I had a crush on a woman that was a ninth grader and I was a seventh grader. And so I was like, what can you do? Gifts on holidays. I don't know. Share gifts, affection. I don't know. Love language. I don't know. Like, what can you do? Right. Because you're just trying to figure out who the hell you are. Right.
Totally.
And one of the things is these other girls in the locker room found out that I was giving gifts and they cornered me and started bullying me.
Yeah.
And during that moment, I never had anyone protect me during that process. And except for one of my PE teachers. So I would go and I would never cry in front of these girls. I would never let anybody I'd never show tears anywhere. Courtrooms, I would just go cry myself, if it was to sleep or to somebody else. So these women would just pick on me, but it was so funny because I literally would look at one of the soccer player girls. I'm like, she's gay. She's gay and she's just not out. Yeah. And she's picking on me because she's coming for herself. Yes, today she is very much gay and has a wife. And the woman that I had a crush on, she is now married and been with her wife for 15 years. So, and then one of the girls that bullied me also came out as bisexual. So we understand here that people were just bullying the girl that they're like, oh, I'm also gay. So I'm going to pick on her. And I think in that moment of being bullied quite often through junior high school, when I got to high school, nobody bullied me. I was very confident. I was tall. And there was a lot of things that went through. And by the time I got there and they were seniors and I was a sophomore, I was taller than half those girls and I really didn't care because I was actually friends with popular sports athletes and things like that. Right. And I covered up my sexuality pretty well at that point. I was dating the basketball star because I was the basketball girl and he was the basketball guy. I'm like, just makes sense to date them, right? My favorite times with him was actually just taking him on the basketball court. I'll bet. And totally schooled him on the 3-pointers. So, but what was interesting though is through that process, I always thought to myself, I wish somebody could have stepped in to help me. And so then anytime I ever saw somebody else get bullied, or it doesn't have to be in the bully aspect, but anytime, but that did happen in jail. So people were bullying people. I'd step in and be like, hey, I was like, there's no need for you to be like that. I'm like, you don't need to treat her like that. I literally said it. It happened in my workspace too. After I graduated from the Art Institute, I got a job at a company where I was a video producer manager role. And we had a girl that was right out of college, out of the University of Washington, become project manager, very bossy project manager. And all the creatives were very much shy and awkward. And I helped manage that team with the video editors and the producers, all great human beings. And this is just another scenario. Every time I see somebody go after someone. So this woman, she did this over and over and over. Every morning we're just nitpick. And you're working in a colleague, a room, a cohort room with about probably 12 people. Yeah. And there was one moment where I just turned around to her one morning and I said, is there a reason why you have to treat people like you do? I was like, there's no reason why you have to speak to him like that. And she just goes, yeah. I was like, she was like, I was like, I'm like, do you listen to yourself? All the guys like in the room were literally like, whoa.
Yeah.
And she steps out, goes in the other room, gets the boss. The boss pulls me into the other room. She sits down and apologizes and is like, can I take you to lunch? And I was like, I don't normally like step in to things, but anytime somebody like is treating someone like unfairly, poorly, talking down at them, there's no reason to talk down to people. Like,
I agree.
Treat people with respect, especially if you don't even know them. Like, treat them with respect. People can make assumptions, they can do whatever they want. But ever since being bullied younger, I've always just wanted to help protect people if it was just in any scenario. So it's just, I think that's where it stemmed from, because I didn't feel like I had somebody to protect me at that point. And I was like, I don't want anyone to feel like that again.
Yeah, I fully appreciate that. And again, I do believe that there's an element of people who didn't have protection becoming protectors in many situations. I personally, I would tell you that probably one of my greatest pet peeves is this just concept of injustice, which comes down to a lot of the dynamics of what you talk about, right? Unnecessarily bullying. And, you use the example of obviously the girls using you in that example of like to divert from their own attention. But what's also funny is that like, it doesn't really matter what the topic is. When there are people who have insecurities around things, they usually are more critical or bullying or judgmental of others who have those same. They're
dealing with it.
Right. And so
exactly it.
It's, it's interesting because though that came out in I think you said middle school time frame, a middle school example of how this all transpired, like that plays out in our lives everywhere. And I think the more in tune we are to seeing that, both for ourselves, so we can set those appropriate boundaries and advocate, but especially for others so that we can recognize those patterns. Yeah. I am a believer, though, that until we learn to advocate for ourselves, it's difficult to advocate for others. And so that's also obvious. That
I definitely step up for myself.
You did. I know. And that's obvious in the way that you do it.
I don't take shit anymore. I did for a while.
You're very clear, very direct, and you set very clear boundaries.
It's also about like staying kind and humble through the process.
I agree.
At the same time. So we all have moments where we're not having the best day, or maybe we might be argumentative, or, like at this point I've stepped back. There's like the reactors, right? You can get a message, you can get an email, you can get a text, you can have somebody talk to you that rubs you the wrong way, and you could just be a reactor, or you could just learn to like step back and be like, I'm not going to respond to that email right now. Like, they're obviously going through something today. Or, step back, see how you can ask for feedback, or, because there's just certain scenarios where you just like, you get frustrated with people. But as long as you don't play off that frustration and you calm it.
I totally agree. I don't believe in difficult conversations. I believe in diffused ones, because I think we all have the ability to do that. Exactly. What you're just talking about is exactly what we teach with this kind of strong spine, soft front approach. It's like, it's just don't operate in an armored reactive state. There's no need to justify, protect, or defend. If you're clear on who you are and you can clearly communicate your boundaries, you don't really need to be affected by all that stuff. You can allow it to pass through.
Boundaries was one thing I've definitely worked on over the years. And it's so important to set boundaries. Yeah. You have to set boundaries with yourself, your team, 100%. Your partner. Like people, like when you do that, like you're just like, oh, like, okay, totally. I feel so much better. Like they understand the boundary. People respect you more when you set the boundaries. I agree. Some people might suddenly be like, and then they're like, makes sense.
But even the example that you used in the court case, you took ownership, you stepped in, you articulated essentially a boundary, which is like, hey, my intent is to do all these things because of what I'm investing in and what I'm shaping. And again, it comes down to clarity, communication, owning your truth, and all of it's connected.
I truly at that point wanted to better my life. I wanted to get out of what I was creating as this spiral. Right. And I had started to get momentum with going back to school again in my late 20s. And, it was funny because I went back to school, and at that time I didn't feel like I fit in, because all these college kids were coming in and out of high school, and all they were wanting to do is 48-hour film festivals. And I'm like, I don't want to be up for 48 hours. I'm like 29. Yeah. And all I wanted to do was build a portfolio that could build a career and build relationships. Yeah. And that really helped me step into things there. So I ended up starting my own production company directly out of college after sobering up. And so it was cool to just be able to be like, I did this, 100%. And But yeah, that's
well, and that was actually where I wanted to go next, because you talked about obviously the trends that were starting to develop around YouTube and virality and all these pieces. And, you know, there's a lot of people who operate in social media and have created virality that don't have a film school background, who don't have the knowledge and understanding of storytelling, who don't understand all the dynamics that go into it. And so that's what I'd like to better understand is, like, especially then when you started your production company and you started doing this work, what was your unique identifier then that separated you beyond just the film school education and backdrop? And what do you think attributed most to your ability to create virality in videos, you know, in the beginning of social media and a lot of these platforms?
Well, I was actually grateful in the process, because when I was, you know, I did come out and I was going through different things, becoming more comfortable in my skin and learning more about YouTube. And what happened with the aspect of YouTube and the production company, I was always so fascinated with stories and other people helping people. So the things that really attributed to what we started to create was, one, Shark Tank came out. Two, The Prophet came out with Marcus Lemonis. And these things really inspired me by watching these shows, right? So here the sharks come in, and I was really intrigued by the stories of the entrepreneurs coming in that were obviously looking for funding for their business. And this was very new to me, because the project manager gal that bullied the guys in the thing, she was like, "Did you guys watch Shark Tank this week?" And I'm like, "What the heck's Shark Tank?" I really thought it was like on the Shark channel or something, like there was like Jaws coming through. And I really didn't have any clue until I looked it up. So then I watched it because they were all talking about it in the office. And I was like, this is interesting. And then they started, like, Lori Grenier started sharing her story and different things like that. And I started watching The Prophet. And when I watched Marcus Lemonis, I was just like, wow. I was like, my soul literally was like, this guy's a good person. Like, I just knew, even if it was on a television show, that he genuinely wanted to help these business owners. And so, but what he was big about is like people, process, and product. But what he didn't really say is like about sharing their stories, you know? And so I got really like honed in on storytelling and things like that. And so the commonality was like, I love the entrepreneur side, and then I love the storytelling. And what happened was I literally was like, I want to tell entrepreneurial business stories. I want to share their stories on YouTube. The idea was that. And I was challenged by two of my mentors that have now passed, that were at the Art Institute. And they literally were like, we want you to go out and do all aspects of a documentary film, from pre-production to filming it, to editing it, to submitting it. Every single step is on you. You take the lead, the director, you name it. So I was like, whew. They're like, we want you to submit it to Sundance Film Festival. I was like, you challenge accepted. Let's go. So I went through this whole process, and it was interesting because I turned around and just started using Twitter to reach out to entrepreneurs, people that I saw that I was intrigued with, people that I'm friends with now, people that have been clients, people that were on Shark Tank. And so we had people that were on Shark Tank on this documentary film and some other things. And people that I still know today. It's awesome. And, so I did this where I interviewed like 11 inspiring entrepreneurs, and I put together this documentary and literally submitted it into Sundance Film Festival at 11:59 p.m. when it was due by midnight. I was like, it's like uploading like really slow because it's like a 76-minute film. I'm like, this is a very large file. And so I did it. I went through the process. It did not get accepted into, the film festival, right? But what happened was, I turned around and took that film and other films like it and started directing, sharing different stories. And I created an LGBT film, 2 films actually, that took off. And they were basically all about women and stereotypes in the LGBT community. And so we called it the L Code. So,
cool.
And this film was so inspiring. Like, I was just like, this is great. I was like, we're going to test these teaser videos, which were under 60 seconds, some of them. And we were going to put them out there and see what kind of traction we could get. We put a few trailers out. Boom. This one trailer came out onto the channel. And we didn't even take a look at the views for like 10 days. We're like, let's just upload it, see what happens. Came back 10 days. It was like 888,000 views.
Wow.
We're like, whoa. And boom, we got traction to the documentary film. Then they asked me to start coming to speak at film circuits. The film started being seen in Seattle, all over, selling out everywhere. Palm Springs started taking off. I started getting asked to speak at film schools. I started getting all these things. And that started my speaker journey, which I still love today. And so that like really took off. And we were like, well, how did this take off? Obviously, we're looking at keywords, topics, emotions. So that was the direction we went. We said, well, how can we tell more people's stories more efficiently versus creating a full documentary film for everyone? Because it's very time consuming. So we started to create brand story trailers. And that was what we did for businesses, entrepreneurs, celebrities, CEOs, founders. And we started evolving that offer to leverage YouTube. And we really started getting into this algorithm with that. And that was like back in like 2012. So that really helped us go, but we wanted to create a business model that was more sustainable and more of a subscription model that was the consistency factor we were talking about. Hey, I was like, we need more consistency here, right? And so later on in life, we were trying to discuss, well, what can we do? Like not just marketing content, not just YouTube content. And later on decided, podcasts, weekly podcasts, but people can still share their message. And we can also pay attention to the data on YouTube. What are people actually searching for, in their specific industries? And so it really took off, and we shift our production company into a content marketing agency focus with the focus of podcast being the medium. And so it just voila, took off, and we ended up launching the offer with what we do now into that at an event. And when we put together the event, it was funny because we hosted events for several years before this shift. And I always wanted to bring people together. And I love the experience model. And we've hosted events since 2014. And we came around to this event a few years later, and we launched the podcast side, and was super grateful. And we stepped into it, and we sold from the stage and generated over $250,000 in 2 days.
Awesome.
And so that really opened up more of the company and the mindset and bringing in more team. And it just took off from there. And so it was cool to see that. And then we were able to duplicate that over the years. But we were like, when that happened, we're like, well, obviously this is a model that people are interested in. And so let's scale this model. And then that happened several years ago. And we've been able to do that because we started with the podcasting side of it. So the podcast producing, distribution, optimization, everything, basically one-stop shop for podcasts. And then later on in life, because the clients were like, what do you guys do the booking? They're like, you should do the booking, because they were telling me these horror stories of going through agencies.
Well, many of the booking agencies are not so great.
Yes. And we're constantly told that. So I went through and I actually hired 3 booking agencies myself to go through the process to see. And I was like, these just are not very good. I'm not going to say any names. I'm still friends with the founders today. And I would never speak poorly, but I'm not going to refer them.
Totally.
And so I came in and I came back to our clients and I said, you're right. You're right. I was like, they're like, you are a connector. And that was some of the things that I did behind the scenes over the years, using Twitter to connect with like celebrities, influencers, other people, build relationships, put these events together, experience models together. And they're like, you're really good at just connecting people. Like, just do it for us, for the podcast. And so that's where we stepped into that a few years ago as well. And then it formulated into more adding into the network aspect and the experience model, like bringing people in to experience things together, not just being booked on shows, but coming in and actually connecting with people that were like-minded and had the same energy. And you just felt like, these are the right people. This is my tribe. Yeah. And so it just started attracting more people that way. So we really started, it was like I call it the tripod. It's like 3-legged tripod. You've got the podcasting production side, the booking side, and the network side. Yep. So that really is kind of how we evolved. And that's really where it started, though, is from the YouTube side of having virality. And then I thought, well, I was like, this, is much bigger than me. So I was like, I want to do this for other people. Yeah. And then that's how it really evolved. So.
Yeah. I love the elements that are integrated into the story because there's a lot of little nuanced decisions and shifts and evolutions that
Paying
take
attention
place. Right.
to it too.
Right. And I appreciate the level of detail because it's, again, very rarely do we wake up and all of a sudden we see these ideas of overnight successes. It's truly people are celebrated in public for what they've practiced in private for years, right? You are also an example of that. You've gotten the chance to be on stages and do different things. Now, when in your life did you realize that you were a creative?
Oh, when I was young.
Did you know it early?
Yeah. No, I always knew I was a creative. I was always getting straight A's in the art classes and every little element. Yeah. Like I loved art. But I also loved basketball. Yeah. Like I was actually playing basketball in college, and then I was hit by the car, which took away my basketball scholarship. So my biggest goal was to be in the WNBA with like Lisa Leslie and, Rebecca Lobo. And like that was my time frame.
Yeah.
And, looking back at it, I was like, I know I could have done that. I know I could have done that, but it wasn't my trajectory. Yeah. Like I was supposed to be hit by a car. I was supposed to be dumped. I was supposed to be gay. I'm supposed to do all this stuff. Right. Supposed to go to jail, and build success in a different way. Like I still love to go to basketball games. I go to all the women's Phoenix games and, stuff like that, get the suites up there. But it was interesting to see that. But yeah, I really just went through that.
What outside of your business is a creative outlet for you today?
Golf.
Really?
Yeah. I love golf.
It's funny that you put that into a creative category.
It is. Like, I think anything to do with sports and driving. Okay. So my wife and I go driving in our Tesla. We just go for a drive, like on the weekend. And it allows us to go to brunch and just think. Yeah. We have the best conversations, creative ideas through marketing efforts that we can tell the team on a Monday morning too. It's very interesting. So like being creative, like is in movement for me, being in movement.
Yes.
So walking the dog.
Totally feel that. And I understand what you're saying. So really it's not that golf itself is creative. It's that the environment and the state that
allowing
golf
the puts you
into allows creativity. That's interesting. Yes. So I 100% agree with that. I actually often call that meditation in motion because it's like when we get ourselves into a flow state where we get access to, sometimes what I call downloads, some of the greatest ideas. To your point, my wife and I will do that when we're in motion and it's like, oh shit, how did we never see this before? So I really actually appreciate that. It surprised me, like I said, because I would thought that golf was the application of creativity, not the environment creator.
I'm trying to think like creativity of like, we're pretty simple. Like we love because I don't go out and drink or party or go we love concerts. We love basketball games. We love golf. Yeah. Like we love to walk our dogs. We have 3 King Charles Cavaliers that are so cute. Like we literally dressed them up today in like Christmas outfits. And one of them's wearing a dinosaur outfit today. I totally posted in my stories.
we have 4 dogs and 2 cats. And my wife literally just got all of them new Christmas outfits. So
we decorated the Christmas tree this weekend and the dogs are trying to get the stuff. We're like, no, the ornaments are high enough that they cannot reach them. But they're like our joy. They're our boys.
Totally.
And so, but creativity wise, I think the creative outlet is actually just being in motion of something that I enjoy doing. I'm totally like a movie buff. Like we like to go to.
All right. Favorite movie.
Fat Cats on Tuesdays.
Favorite movie.
That's a hard
Fat Cats is cool, by the way.
Yes, it is. Recliner chairs.
Yeah.
They even have bowling. Gosh, favorite movie? Okay, since it's around the holidays, I say my favorite holiday movie is The Family Man with Nicolas Cage.
Oh, okay.
So if you know about this movie, like I'm a big sucker for change from stories that like become emotionally compelling, right? So I don't know if you've seen The Family Man.
I have not that I can recall, but I'm sure I've seen it at some point because I've seen a ton of movies.
Yeah, so with Nicolas Cage, so that would be my favorite movie around the holidays.
I love it.
But he literally goes through this process where he makes this decision to leave his fiance or girlfriend to take this job at this firm in London for like a year, right? Okay. But it changes him. He becomes a man that is not going to come back to her. And he comes back and he gets into Wall Street. So he gets very wealthy, very much like, my team works on Christmas Eve, kind of Scrooge-like, very successful. But obviously he's missing his happiness and love. Like he's always wondering what happened to that love that he left behind. And he gets this glimpse. It's one of those Christmas stories, where you get to have this angel-like figure that comes in is like, I'm going to give you a glimpse of what your life would have been like if you chose to go this way. And so he has all these epiphanies about, what could have happened. And then at the end of the story, he goes back and he actually goes and finds her to see what she's done today. And she's become a successful firm owner that just sold her firm, and she's moving to Paris.
Oh, wow.
At the end. And so, but at the end of the movie, they get to at least sit down and have a cup of coffee. They get to like catch up and say, like, he's like, it might've been just a glimpse, but I saw what we could be like. I could see what it's like to have a family and kids and a dog. And so like that epiphany type story is always attracted to me, like the inspired ones that can make you have a tearjerker movies.
Yeah, no, I think it's great.
But other types of movies that have been my favorite growing up, I loved A Walk to Remember.
Oh, yeah.
And Sweet November were two of my favorite movies growing up.
Okay.
And again, those
are two classics. And yes.
But it's always because somebody's showing change. And I think I relate to that because I went through this like
100%
crazy story that turned into change. And I think that's why I'm attracted.
And every single one of your stories gives inflection point moments and change and in a rapid way compressed into short periods of time. Right. And so I appreciate that. We just went on Monday night to the Harkins Grill, whatever, the one that's got the reclining chairs and all that as well. And we saw the new Christmas movie, which I'm totally drawing a blank on the name of. The
pageant one.
Yes.
We saw it on Monday too.
What'd you think?
I actually liked it.
I did too.
So
I was going to say, the reason I brought it up is because I was like, that's one that had kind of an epiphany moment.
Yeah. So the children coming in that were, neglected and had to be tough kids that came in and had their own moment to finally maybe be themselves or somebody else. And the tears coming to their eyes through that Christmas pageant. So yeah, those are the types of movies that really move me.
I love it. I love that you went on Monday too. We did that exact same thing on Monday. That's awesome.
Totally saw Venom yesterday. Yes, I went to the movies 2 days in a row.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think
that's what you can do when you have a life that you want to live. You're like, hey, do you want to go to a movie tonight? Sure, let's go.
I think that's amazing. The only limitation for us in that respect at this moment is that we have a 9 and a 10-year-old.
Yes.
And so, but we largely just grab them and do the same thing. That's kind of literally, we were like, let's take the kids to the movie tonight. Let's go have dinner at the movie theater and just do something different because it's always fun. And I do love the power of story as well. I said something to you when we were standing next to each other right before we walked into dinner in Vegas. Mm-hmm. And it seemingly was something that you knew, acknowledged, but also that has been said to you often that it almost felt like you haven't fully owned about yourself yet. And it's this idea of being a community builder. Do you remember that quick little interaction?
Well, I remember one part at dinner. Right before I went into dinner.
Do you view yourself as a community builder?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were talking about your event that's coming up in 2025 and just this whole concept of getting people in the same room, right? Which you curate in an experience and the way that you guide people through your podcast. You guys do it right. You do it in the SiriusXM studio. You do batch filming. You give people an experience. And what I appreciate in the business that you're in is you very clearly integrate clients, prospective clients, and other people that just have cool stories or doing cool things that you want to build relationships all into one pot. And you just stir it up and you see what happens. And I think that there's a lot of cool fun to that.
There's always like everybody walks away like with like a new best friend or a colleague or a business partner or power partner.
Right.
And it's so cool because and this has happened for years. This happened when we started hosting events. It was funny because I literally got a story shared from 8 years ago from a client that just was on our show this past week. And I haven't seen him in years, but he invested in a couple of different experiences, sponsored our events and was a speaker 2 separate times at our events. And he's always like, you always just bring the greatest people together. And what was unique about it, though, it's like, I've always loved bringing people together. And then the fact that people always come back, they're like, they're always like, I met so-and-so through one of Tamara's events or, through BYA or whatever, or through the community. And people always come back and thank me later. They're like, I met so-and-so at one of your events. If it was like at our SiriusXM, like recording session, or if it's at one of our 3-day annual events. And that's why I'm excited for 2025 because we were going hardcore on 3-day events from 2014 up through 2019. And then we literally put that to a pause when COVID hit. And I went through my own, journey on that part too. And I think everybody did. And I didn't want to actually step back into the space for a while. I just was like, it wasn't that I wasn't confident in it. It was just like, I didn't feel like I was in the spot where I just was like ready to like propel again. And then this year we decided we had an awakening when we went to Egypt, because we did get weight gain and all these things from COVID and being complacent and stuff like that. And just things happening in life, and gained quite a bit of weight again. I was like, man, as soon as we went to Egypt, we both were like going up and down these staircases, doing these tours, checking out these tombs. We went down to like King Tut's tomb. Like we're going up and down. I'm like, man, we're out of shape. It was like, that was our awakening that we had. And so after we made that decision to get back on a better health track, and both of us have lost 60 pounds in the last 6 months.
Awesome. Good for you.
Thank you. And we're super, super excited for that piece of it, and still working hard at it. But I was like, as soon as I get back on this track, I know I can step into having a successful event again and really bring people together. But I wanted to be at my best health again in order to put these experiences together. Because I put together these experiences at SiriusXM over the past few years. But I was like, I'm excited to put together a 3-day event where people actually come in and connect and learn more about the podcasting space and networking, and just. But we put together a really cool experience. Like, there's so many different things that happen through the event that people are like, oh, these guys they know how to like, it's not just like I'm going to take notes and listen to the speaker. Like, there's a lot of fireside chats, a lot of activity building, a lot of experiences that we have, a lot of like just different types of things that are fun. It's just makes people, it's a memorable experience.
Well, and I even appreciate the intent with the word experience versus just event, right? Because I do believe that what you're talking about is really truly building community and providing experience that people can experience.
That's like my favorite
where that term came from, right?
And I was like, I want to experience something cool.
But there's truth to that, right? And there's so many things that people may not be exposed to. And there's a lot of events that, to your point, are just like you cram way too many speakers into way too little time, and it's not necessarily tangible, actionable. There isn't experience.
Talking about different topics,
right?
Like, I mean, some of them are very well calculated in the format. I mean,
I'm not bashing on all events at all. Exactly. I'm just saying there are so many that just follow this like
structure,
right? And yet there needs to be space for it to breathe, and there needs to be space for relationships to develop. And clearly that's one of the big things that you do.
You want them to feel too, like
that's
feel emotional.
Exactly right.
There's the emotional factor too. So you host events that, you're sharing knowledge, they're gaining those knowledge bombs, they're networking with people, they're creating memories together, but you're also, there's that emotional connection with your audience. If people are just sitting there and you're looking out there and they're just yawning left and right, I'm like, you better get the move in or figure out something, because maybe they did sleep that night, but that might be that one person. but I mean, we get people on the mic, we're asking questions, we're, let's figure out, let's help you on your trajectory and allow them to feel comfortable enough, because yes, you're going through these experiences, then maybe they enroll into your program. Maybe they sign up for this next experience that you're holding because they felt an emotional connection. And that's really what's important to me in these experiences. And I'm super excited for the next one.
Yeah. I mean, coming up in 2025.
It's been a bit. Yeah, it's been a bit for sure, but we're ready for it. Feel much better and healthier on our health track, and just ready to step into more of the network again.
Yeah. So. You and I were talking off show in the beginning about the spiritual journey that you and your partner have been on. And, one of the specific things that I asked you, because you referenced what you called angel numbers.
Yep.
And though you gave me a high level understanding of like where the angel numbers got introduced to you and where they were, we didn't get into the specifics of why the number that you use. Now, why I call attention to it is that 4 is actually my number.
4,
8,
like
8,
4.
Yeah, 8 is my wife's number. Oh. And so like almost everything in our world is somewhat divisible by 4 or 8. It's
ours are 4 and 2.
And there's right. So there's lots of connections, but obviously 4/4/22 was a significant date, and it was decided because of these angel numbers. So specifically as it relates to the 4s and 2s, what do those numbers represent for you? And why was it meaningful for you and your partner to do your vows and actually formalize your marriage
Mm-hmm.
on such a significant date?
Yeah. So, before we got together, we weren't really that spiritual. And, we started just seeing numbers everywhere. It would be on license plates, they would pop up on screens, phones. We started to pay attention to things because we would just say it out loud if you're like driving. You're like 444. And then we started following some different individuals in the spiritual space. We started following some psychic mediums and like doing that. We were hiring people for readings and we'd go up to Sedona a lot. We love Sedona. Sedona is one of our favorite places. We go up and meditate on Bell Rock. We go up and hike with the dogs. And we take time for ourselves because every time we want to refresh or recharge, we go up to Sedona.
I have to totally interrupt you real quick for an ADHD moment. My favorite hike is the West Fork Trail north of Sedona. Have you guys done that?
Most likely. I don't know the names of all of them, but I'll have to look it up.
It's the one that's north of Slide Rock, and there's only 40 or 50 parking spots. It's in the national park.
Maybe
there's a fee. If you've not done that, I need to direct you to go do this. You cross over the stream and 3 miles back 13 times and then 13 times on the way back. Okay. And there's a really epic spot.
I don't think we have that.
Yeah. So later I'll give you all the detail, but like you got me like geeked up because Sedona I love. And so
we've
continue. Thanks for my moment.
No, we will like that. So we started like kind of just paying attention to things. We started going up. We'd go to all the gem stores and the rocks, and we started buying like gems and like understanding like the meanings of them, reading up on them. We started buying tarot cards. We're like, this just doesn't seem like us. But then we're like, well, maybe it is us. So we just didn't ever know. And so, it was interesting. So we went into Sedona and we had our first psychic reading. And we're like, this is different. Let's do it. And so this lady named Nancy that we're still connected to today on Facebook. Most people we connect with, there's been the spiritual side. Like we always just feel like they're just connected. And we had this reading and it was just interesting. She was just like going on about, how we were, meant to come into this space that you're going to become more spiritual over time and understanding, become more in tune with yourself and enlightened and, all the stuff that people say. But there were certain things in the reading that she started to say about life and business that was starting to hit there. And I was like,
pretty relevant. Yeah.
And I was like, she's got it on point here. And then she actually made a prediction about our business that actually came true.
Oh, wow.
Later on, we connected with the psychic twins that had a huge channel back in the day. They've stopped that channel when they lived in Los Angeles. So they moved to Pennsylvania. The psychic twins have been on like really significant shows and they've made very large predictions. So we hired them one day and they read this reading for me years back and we've kept in touch and we're friends now and I hire them every year. And it's so crazy to look back on what they've said that would be a trajectory. Like, I mean, you could have someone say something, then you're like, I'm going to go do that. Right. It's going to happen. Right. But I just started to be like, wow, how do they know this stuff? Or, or is it just energy that they're pulling and they can sense it from my soul? And so just a lot of crazy information was read that I then believed to be true as I saw things unfolding. And, seeing numbers and things like that, we've just always seen numbers. And then one day we signed up for Monica the Medium. So she had an in-person event. I want to say it was 2021. No, it's got to be before COVID. Probably 2017. Oh my gosh. Oh, it was a while ago. So we went out to San Diego and it was a really interesting time. We had a client that was also psychic. And I had a call with this client before we were going to this show. And I started feeling something like hitting my ankle. My ankle started hurting. My back of my leg was hurting. She's on the call. She's like, is your ankle and your calf hurting? And I was like, what? And she's like, your dad's trying to get your attention. And my dad's since passed. And he's trying to get your attention. He's trying to say that he's proud of you and everything that you're doing and accomplishing. And like, he's kicking you. He's kicking you, though. He wants you to get back in shape.
Wow.
Because I had started putting on weight at this point. And so it was weird because that was one moment. The next day was when we were going to this thing. And it was weird. This the house that we rented in San Diego, there was this thing that came above us. It had to have been a helicopter, but we were like trying to figure it out because I'm like, it looked like a UFO.
Yeah.
And we're like, what's going on? It's got to be a military helicopter. And so I go running across the room to like check it out, and I trip and fall. And as I'm falling, I said, Dad, why did you trip me out? Like, I literally had this thought, and I was like, I know it was my dad, and I don't know why he tripped me. So he's kicking me, he's tripping me, like getting like I'm like, okay, stop it, just stop it. And then that night we're going to this show, right? This reading, and Monica the medium, she will only read like 8 people during this whole evening, and there's like a couple hundred people in that room. So she comes in, and my wife's like, maybe she'll pick us, and I'm like, well, whatever's meant to be will be meant to be. And then she's done. She's wrapping up her readings with this person across the aisle from me. And then she turns around, turns around, and she goes, ow. She goes, why is my ankle hurt? Why is my calf hurt? And then she stops and she turns around and looks at me. And she was like, and then Danielle was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, she points at my ankle and she looks at me. She goes, your dad's trying to get through to you. And it was just so crazy. But one of the things that we followed her, and she's big on 444. So we started after that moment seeing 444 everywhere.
Yeah.
And then we ended up booking our wedding date on 4422.
Yep.
So obviously 22 equals 4. So the close is enough for 444. And I am now 44 today.
Today?
Well, not today.
Oh, I was like, today's your birthday?
This year. Yeah, that came up this year. I mean, I'm 44 as of now.
Awesome.
But it was interesting, though, like all these things that were like kicking me, trying to get my attention, opening like these awakenings with the health journey. So that was one health journey kick that I got kicked back into the health journey. And then again, later in life as well during this point. And so I'm just always paying attention to everything around me, from the time clock. Like we were in here, and I was like, it's 222. And I'm in the car. I'm in wherever it is. Like I listen to what people are saying, and even like doing like card readings, right? Like some people are like, oh, that's too woo woo for me, right? But it's very interesting when you're like tapped into your energy. And my wife and I do this in very different ways, and how we draw cards. Every single time it's on point, or it predicts something that we're like,
interesting.
Holy macaroni salad. Like
interesting. I've never done card readings. I've done a lot of the other things, but I haven't done card readings.
Well, the way that I do it, and people can do it different ways, is I lay them all out. And I don't know how in tune you are with like the energy throughout your body.
Very, very in tune. Yeah.
But the way that I do it, and it works for me, is I literally ask for it to only bring in divine light and what I need to know right now about my past, present, and future. Yeah. So I do a past, present, and future reading, and that allows me to in tune. So once I lay it out, I close my eyes. So I'm only feeling the energy of the card that needs to be felt. And so it literally, I'll be very specific. I'm like, this card in this very moment is what I need to know right now about my past. Specifically, I might do it in like personal life, or maybe for business. So I'm just very intentional with asking what I need to know. And it's so crazy because I never, ever was woo woo. I still don't consider myself woo woo. Like, but at the same time, like that's just not my word, but I know I'm spiritual.
It's not my word either. It's just what everybody calls it. But
it is. But I mean, but when you're open to life and
possibility is limitless,
paying attention to that, it was very intriguing because on this next season for our show, we had 2 psychics in this last one. And it was funny because neither of them knew each other were going to be there, but the panel and the energy, like these episodes are going to be amazing. And it might not be the content that people have been used to on my show, but I'm so excited for it because one of them is she has a show that we helped launch her 3rd season called The Psychic Within. And she actually works with business individuals to help them utilize psychic abilities for their business. And so it's very intriguing to me of how you can utilize your power.
Totally.
Energy is just Energy is a thing.
Well, it's energy, and it's energy transfer, and it's about what we're connecting to and what we're able to see. And, it's interesting. There are many of my clients and many people who have asked me, they're like, do you consider yourself a medium? Because they feel like in the work that I do and how I do it, they're like, how the fuck do you see or know what you seemingly know? Yeah. And what's funny is I don't identify that way. Mm-hmm. Though I can recognize where or how they might, make that terminology. But just like the woo terminology, for me, it's like, I'm just present. Mm-hmm. And I'm allowing and I'm paying attention to energy and a variety of things that connect to that. Mm-hmm. But it is interesting because, to your point, when we actually start to open ourselves to it, we do see a lot more, not only about ourselves, but with other people and connecting dots. And it can be a blessing and a curse in some moments, depending on how you decide to use it. Mm-hmm. But I think it is a superpower to be able to just explore possibility. Mm-hmm. And especially when it's done objectively and non-judgmentally, but through the lens of just observation, understanding, exploration, which is largely how you've lived your life. I'm going to kind of be a little adjacent, or I guess a little dramatic in my shift back towards the tail end of our conversation here. But with your specific focus around storytelling, your understanding and knowledge of the particular medium that you teach, deploy, and provide services for, and what I would suggest is your wisdom, experience, and emotional intelligence that you've developed through life. I would imagine that there are many cases that though you provide a service for people, you're really coaching and facilitating and bringing things out both within themselves as well as opportunities within their business. And so what I'd like to understand is, let's say you know nothing about somebody today and they come to you because they think they want to start podcasting. Mm-hmm. In the overly simplistic surface element of what that means, right? What do you see as the possibility that can exist for anyone in the space? And how do you teach people to step into and tell their stories, as well as to connect and interview others to bring the best conversations out?
That's such a loaded question.
Super loaded. I know. You're the expert. I got to ask,
Yeah, no, it's always different with every single person that comes to me. Is. So the way that they ask a question may be different how you ask the question, of course. So, the first thing I always ask is like, what is their bigger picture? Like, what is their goal? Do they have a business? Like, majority of people we work with have businesses. They have some sort of story that's connected to their business. I think a lot of times people, like they said, they're like, well, this is our target audience and this is the story for our brand. And this is, XYZ, maybe they're thinking logical, because they want to see ROI come in there. So, but I'm always asking like what their backstory is first. Yeah. It's very important. I know you do as well. So you need to know like first, like what's your backstory? Why are you doing this? Why did you get into this? Tell me a little bit more on that side first. So we're always asking our clients like, what is that first? Right. And a lot of times we end up just having a conversation where they don't even realize like what the story is or the trajectory of the story. They're like, this is a goal. I want to generate, 5 million this year, like, I'm like, that's okay. That's a goal. That's a goal. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm like, now what do you have to offer that's going to generate that to your customers? How do you help your customers? So first we're asking about their story. Then we're asking more about like their customer journey. Yep. And so when you understand that aspect of it, and then you also understand what their goals are, you can come in and set realistic goals through that process and say like, we typically will share like case studies and like, this is how we helped so-and-so. Like, this is how, she evolved this story into this, or this is how they did a rebrand. Yeah. There's a lot of people that come to us that have had podcasts for years and we just take over. Yeah. I had a conversation with a gentleman that one of our clients introduced us to, and it was interesting because he was like, I've had a show for 8 years. And he was like, but I still haven't monetized it. I was like, you've been doing it for 8 years, so obviously you love it. But at the same time, like, who have you hired? What is the story that you're trying to tell? What is the, people that you're trying to attract? And we just had this like open conversation about, what his goals were. I'm like, I literally just laid out like ideas and options and things like right off the bat. He's like, wow. He's like, nobody's even like told me that that's even a thing, with podcasting. And so it's just sitting down and having those organic conversations. And a lot of the time, those organic conversations end up coming into clientele. And a lot of the time, I just want to like be of service. I just want to be like, hey, like this is what our company does. This is some results here, but I really need to know a little bit more of your backstory here because it's interesting too, because we even work with larger corporations. One of our clients actually, their contract, they're saying their 3rd-year contract this week. It's one of our largest corporations that we work with. We took over their show, or they call it a webcast. And what's unique about their story was we were coming in to help alleviate too many chefs in the kitchen. And it was funny because we had a conversation and I had asked, this was years back, I said, and I giggled because I thought she was joking. And I was like, how many people do you have working on your webcast? She was like, I think it's 16. So you can see why I giggled, right? But then I understood that corporations have so many levels of approval process, things like this. They make $44 billion a year. So it was interesting to come in, and we took over their entire show in this process and have an expedited route for them that they've just been super grateful. Now they only have 2 touch points that communicate with our team of 2 touch points.
Oh, wow.
And so we were build the system, and they all have a flow, and they've been working together for a few years. But we were able to take those people that didn't need to be in there and like just find that solution right away. Like we're like, well, what does this person do? Like, do they really need to be on that? Well, no, they're just communicating with this person. I'm like, well, we already do this for you. So it got to that point where it's like that one-stop shop was like so appealing for them. And they're like, oh my gosh, now we can have them focus on what their real role is and within the company. And so it's like really just fine tuning on each individual or company level. What is that solution that we provide? And to be able to share their message, their story, up level their branding, actually allow for monetization, actually teach them like what we're doing, share with them what we're doing. Cause a lot of people sign up for services and they're like, oh, it's just another service company. The one thing that we've been able to do is actually come through and people say like, we can genuinely see that your team cares. You're responsive, you're professional, and they keep coming back. And so it's like about building that retention rate as well. And so I've just been grateful for the team behind the scenes. It just helps that. But I mean, it really is different for everybody.
Yeah, well, I would expect that it would be different for everybody, but it also takes a recipe and the components that you just described to be able to get somebody there.
Yes.
Right. And to be able to know the questions to ask and the direction and the strategy and the understanding and the application and all of it. You have built multiple businesses. You are running a successful, growing business today, helping others grow their businesses. What do you find to be your greatest problem in business or life today?
In my life and business? Or, I think I don't see it as like problems. There's always challenges that come up. I think one of the things that we had to learn really fast was actually how to scale fast. And it's a good challenge to have.
It is.
And so back in the day when we presented that offer from the stage, we then had to multiply our team, and then we found ways to do that effectively. And so, we're going to be doing another big push this year as well. So we're preparing for what that looks like and putting in projections of team. But the way that we really started to really hone in on that challenging piece was actually to pre-train people. So we pre-train people, bring in people part-time to literally prepare them and then shift them into full-time. So it's in multiple departments. And so we've basically got our project floor managers that manage the project managers under there. So there's like 3 of the project floor managers that then cater to 10 project managers, and then they manage the rest of the team. So there's multiple creative team members and things like that. So when you're working on hundreds of podcast clients a week, you have to make sure like, hey, so we've got the system down to like, hey, a project manager can manage 8 accounts, per week. Like this is the max. Like we don't want to overhaul it, pre-train, get things ready. There's so many different things. I think that's one of the things that we're learning through the process. And I think we still learned that. And I hired one of my mentors that has an agency, and they do about 25 million annually a year. And so we utilize the same system at this point. And so we're fast tracking that trajectory within our own company, which is super exciting and grateful. But it's a lot though, because under that, you have like 500 team members. So it's very much I think the other thing that came easier to me after hiring mentors and stepping into mastermind groups is really understanding that, and I've seen it with other people where they are a CEO versus a leader.
Yeah.
And they're just like, they're a boss. They call them bossies or bossy,
Yep.
right? And that was one of the things that I had to evolve into as a person too, because I was like, letting go of things in the beginning of owning a production company and overseeing things. I had to trust other people to oversee things. And so like being a leader though, like you empower other leaders.
You have to.
So you're hiring leaders to lead in each department. And so that was one thing that I learned, over the years too. And I mean, that is always evolving too, just always wanting to become a better leader on that.
So one of the things that we talked about pre-show, and I think this is potentially, I don't remember, but I want to say I saw it on the intake form as well, as it related to some of your biggest problem, which was around this concept of more.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's explore that a little bit.
I was trying to think about how that really came to be, like always wanting more. My partner and I are on the same boat. We literally were like, I think it was because of the fact that we always wanted to give back more.
Yeah.
Right. Like we see, you see success as a certain thing. You get a taste of success. So you're like, okay, cool. I got you have your things in life, your house, your puppies, your car, things that like are materialistic, but also things that you care about. And then she's like, well, what else do you want more of? I'm like, well, I want to help more with my family. I want to be able to take them on trips. I want to be able to show them a different way of life.
Yeah.
And so my partner and I, like even this Christmas, we're taking our entire family, her side and my family, and we're taking them to Orlando for Disney Christmas.
That's awesome.
So we rented this 10-bedroom home and basically helped book all the flights and get everything taken care of. And my brother's helping contribute to him and his wife are coming down from Boston. We're basically flying in like her whole side of the family. And, we're being able to do that when we wouldn't have been able to do that in the past and they can't do that for themselves. So that like gets us excited to do more, right? Like we love to travel. Like we always want to do more. We want more, right?
Yeah.
And so we always say like, well, when we are able to build this next level of success, this is the goal that we have to help more people, but we also want to do it in different ways. So we started our investment firm where we actually want to give back through that investment firm too. So we started different real estate investments and things like that. But our bigger goal is actually to give back to entrepreneurs. And that investment firm that we're building right now will become eventually basically a venture capital firm.
So I love all of that, by the way. And I love the purpose and the intent behind it. I love the intention with giving. I love the intention for more for others, right? But it's also interesting because the way you spoke about it, even where it showed up on the form, was that it was almost like this idea of always wanting more is a problem. And so maybe help me understand where it is that you experience it as a problem or where maybe there's negativity attached to it.
Yeah. So I think I think it's more on the judgment side. So not that we feel like it's bad. There's people out there in the world that feel money is evil and money is the root of all evil. And so people can become jealous or, I don't ever want to be someone that's like says I'm greedy, like I want more, right? But there are still people that we're connected to from our past and even family members that may say like, hey, even though we're trying to do something nice for you, they may see it as boasting or, putting it in your face. And that's not the intent. And I think the judgmental piece of it is that. And so when I do talk to my wife about things, she is scared of the judgmental piece. I literally am like, I just want more so I could do more and spend more time with family and loved ones. And so I've come to terms with that, but it's just being able to approach other people because, I believe that I stay pretty humble online. I do like to post my trips and things like that. And I'll do certain things.
You're just bringing people into your lifestyle and you're promoting that you can build the life you want.
Yeah. In the beginning though, I don't like to brag. I don't like to brag. And that's what's hard sometimes because there are certain moments where like people are like, you should tell people that story. Like you had this monumental success piece on the business side or the revenue jump. Like I don't want to talk about that all the time because it is a fear of judgment.
Yep, it is.
it's not that I'm scared of doing it. It's just like, I don't like how people treat people sometimes.
Do I have permission to reflect something back to you in this moment on that? Okay. I identify deeply with a lot of what you're saying, and partially because the predominant narrative of shame that I was affected by is one that I was blind to for a long time. There's 2 talk tracks to shame. There's I'm not worthy and I'm not good enough. And I'd be lying if I told you I didn't have moments there. But the reason I didn't identify with having shame in my life for a long time is that wasn't my predominant narrative, right? The second is when you shut that down, you show up in the arena and you do perform. So who the fuck do you think you are? Who do you think you are to build such a big business? Who do you think you are to continue to go show all these? Who do you think you are to invite everybody and host all this stuff? And so literally it got to a place where everything major I did, I felt the need to apologize for. Right. Through the same lens of like judgment and shame, because it was like, oh, well, and then the big question that always comes back for anybody that has any kind of financial success, especially is when is enough? Right. And what's interesting is I think that at least in my experience, the initial drive was money for money's sake, even though it was still driven by underlying desire to create impact. Whereas today, I live with impact first and the income consistently follows. But I think it's interesting because I want to empower you and her with language and a way to position it in a way that you can own it, in a way that you can advocate for yourselves and why it's also beneficial. Because you're right, it's because of the judgment, but it's a dynamic of shame, and it's because of what it ignites in terms of discomfort in other people. That they try to keep us small, contained, or they don't want to highlight those things. And even to the point of like, I don't want to brag. If you're speaking fact about an outcome that you produced and you can celebrate it, why is that a bad thing? It's highlighting opportunity for others. It's a model and example for what's others. And here's the reality. There's a big difference between never feeling like you have enough and desiring more. What I mean by that is I can be extremely grateful and completely satisfied with everything I have and experience and do today up until this moment. But I also have hopefully another 40 years ahead of me.
Yes.
So defining and deciding that I'm going to stop and I'm okay with everything right now when I plan to have 40 more years ahead of me, that's 40 more years of more.
Yeah.
And why do I have to limit myself about potential and opportunity? Because somebody can't see the possibility in the future. And so I highlight that for you because you're very clear on the judgment and the shame dynamic to it. But I love that you have reconciled it. But it's also about how do you step into communicating it clearly, because it is for the benefit of others. It's not about putting more money in your bank account. It's not about providing. You and your wife have the freedoms to do the things you want to do at the level that you want to do them already today.
Yeah. Well, we say that every day. And always gratitude.
And that's the reality is I believe that you guys operate from that position of gratitude. And what am I hearing deeply in everything you talk about? Yes, it's about you, but it's actually bigger than you. And what you're doing is you're trying to live your life in a way and bring others along with you to experience what you've put yourselves in a position to experience.
And you want people to also kind of catch that bug.
Yes.
Right? Like you're like, the more we can show the gratitude, the more that we can show what we've done building from scratch. Like I didn't come from anything. Neither of us came from anything. Like there was a moment in my life where I had $4 in my account before I got started and I couldn't even buy a Starbucks coffee. Like these are the things that I can say, because a lot of people, like I said, they do judge people sometimes. And there's still people that we're connected to that are, loved ones that still hold those conversations. So we don't want to have to like tread lightly on social or, things like that. I mean, there's plenty of the people in the world that are like, I'm just not on social and I live my life, build that success. But then we also have companies where we also want to connect with people. So we love social media.
Right.
So yeah, it's really, we've come back to that space quite a lot. I think I've stepped into it probably a little bit more than her. I think she's just more connected to it because of more family members on that side.
Which again, I understand. And I don't say the fact that you're in that state with any layer of judgment. I get it. I know why you're there. I've been there. I can be there still in moments. Again, this isn't even a comparison with you and me, but it is interesting how shame is used to shackle people, right? In a way that limits growth and opportunity. And that's what we all want anyway.
I tend to at this point just kind of push things aside. So it's like if somebody comes in to state something that's trying to either bring someone down, I either take it with a grain of salt. If it's somebody that I know, love, and care about, I just take it with a grain of salt, let it go. Or, or we simply remove this person from social media.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain things that you can do. And you're not going to get along with everyone. Not everyone's going to believe in my core values, things like that. And our personalities might clash. But I've truly found people based on reading people, intuition,
100%.
Even through a messenger with people. I can tell when people are coming in and genuinely trying to be hey, let's really connect. You watch their content, you see their posts, you read their messages. My intuition says you're a good person. I want to connect with Brian.
Yeah.
Right. There's other people that come through quite often that are just hey, I love your content, blah, blah, blah.
It's surface level bullshit.
Surface level bullshit. And then I also trust my intuition fully on things because there's something that doesn't feel right.
Right.
And so at this point, I've really just trusted my intuition, but also just even the energy that things are coming through. And, this, the always wanting more has just kind of been on that side of it, not being a problem, but just not wanting to feel certain emotions that come in from certain people that we necessarily don't want to remove from our life. We just want to educate them. And so we still do. But
I know it doesn't inhibit your actions, your desires, your growth, your path. But what I also just want to highlight is that one of the dynamics that I talked to you about when I was on your show is just this idea that the second we protect ourselves, we disconnect ourselves. Mm-hmm. So if there's ever a position where you guys are in a protective energy because of the fear of judgment, it limits possibility and growth. Mm-hmm. And because of how authentic and pure I know you are in your desire to help others, all I'm trying to encourage is to continue both for yourself and for her into moving yourselves into a place where you can own that so much that you have nothing to defend, justify, prove, regardless of any judgment, criticism, or shame that will ever take place. And I understand the close relationships and family. I understand all those dynamics. I don't want to minimize them because that's challenging. But you guys deserve to completely own the fact that you're doing more for other people. And that's huge.
Yeah. And we've done some incredible things. It was funny because not this past August, but the August before, it was my birthday, but I decided to treat and fly her parents out, and my mom out all to, Telluride, Colorado.
I love that.
And so we took a private jet out and I flew them all out, and she didn't know that her parents were coming and she didn't know my mom was coming.
Oh, wow.
So, but the fact that it was my birthday and I wanted to treat our parents, we could have just gone and had a spa day, and it was fun because we rented the penthouse at this place and did spa day and everything, and they'd never had a spa day before. And the fact that I can do that though, I love experiences. I'm I want the ones that I love to do that. And then they're wow. And that was the first time I saw her father really smile in photos in a long time.
That's amazing.
I thrive off of gratitude. And so when people, either clients, family members, friends, colleagues, express gratitude, I always light up.
Yeah.
The ones that maybe in our family that are still takers, I hear that. I see that too. So we've stopped.
Yep. As I'm happy that you see
giving those that are not expressing gratitude, even if they're not in a position to do things with us or things. And it's funny because we've opened this door in teaching some family members how to be different and think in gratitude. And, it's very interesting. It's fun to see that because I know it's what we've been able to do and create to rub off on them to think a little 100%. Bit differently. But being able to do things like that just excites me. I'm oh, now I just want to do it for everybody.
Well, I mean, I completely agree. One of my biggest motivators to continue to grow in financial success, but also relationship success and growth and opportunity is for the benefit of others.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife and I've had a philosophy on give until it hurts since the time we've been together, which means we've given even when we don't have to give. And often we give to the point that we feel it because it is more meaningful for us.
Yep.
Because it's not about, it's not about just protecting our own. It's about making sure that everyone gets to experience what we have. Well, and I love that. I love that you do that.
Well, it comes on all levels too. So example, last Christmas, one of our team members, like her computer was literally going kaput. And I was like, I'm just going to ship you a new one. Like, and you can keep it, like, obviously write off whatever, but it's yours. Like, no matter if you work with us after next year or not, it's yours. We're not taking it back. We're not like being able to do stuff like that.
Huge.
You know, we have a guy that's been working with us for about 5 years on the video editing side. And every year we do something kind for his family because he's got 3 sons. And he literally wrote me last year and said, boss, you literally have helped us get our first new car. We were able to buy our first house. All these things,
that's what it's about.
I was like, oh, I love that. Like, I was like, he's like, you've provided me stability for my family. And then you guys treat us kindly and with respect. And we're always there to listen.
Yeah.
And so it's cool to do that, not just for team, but for clients as well. Like, hey, I want to introduce so-and-so, opening doors for clients. I want you to meet this person because I think they'd be a great guest for your show, or they might even be a potential client. You know, this might be a great power partner for you. Love to introduce you to this person because they're having an event and I know you're an incredible speaker. How can I just open the door? That's why they call me the connector behind the scenes.
I love it.
Because that's one thing I love is just connecting the dots. So.
Well, what I find as well is that typically the people that are the most connected are those that connect others, right? It's an active process of being and becoming connected and facilitating that for other people. And there is an art and a science to it as well, which you clearly know and understand. My dear, I am grateful for so much of how you show up in the world and for how open and transparent you were through the course of all of this discussion. I would love it if you could leave the audience with a closing thought as it relates to the more that you envision for our world or for them. And all of your elements for Broadcast Your Authority and everything else will be in the show. Become a part of your community.
I appreciate you. I'm grateful for you too. And I'm glad that I believe Brian connected us or Justin.
Brian Galkey Justin Mose. No. Who connected? Steve Sims.
Yes.
And then Justin Mosley and I met.
A chain reaction.
But it's all connected. That's what's really funny because Steve, Justin and I then.
I was talking with Steve yesterday.
Right. I love Steve. And Justin and I met. We were introduced by Galkey.
Yes.
And what's funny is Galkey introduced us. Justin and I met the Monday before we were both coming to fly to your show. And we're like, where are we going to meet up in person? And we were like, well, what's your upcoming travel? I'm going to be in Vegas on Thursday. I'm going to be in Vegas on Thursday. And then the next thing I know, Galkey's reaching out. He's like, hey, what do you know about Broadcast Your Authority? I got connected to Tamara and I was like, is it something it would be a good idea to do? I saw you did it. And so to your point, total small world, but yes, grateful for Steve. And then just, again, it's a representation of all the good people that you attract. I mean, those are just representations of names of people that I feel so privileged to call friends and you as well. So.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, no, I'm super grateful for just the opportunity to be here and share a little bit more about my backstory and what we're building with Broadcast Your Authority and, people that are really looking to, step out in that space if they have a podcast or they're looking to start a podcast or they just want to get connected with good people and build more of that network side of it. And I'd love the opportunity to connect with more people, Broadcast Your Authority. And we're just going to do so much more, now and leading up. And again, I'm just grateful for everything going on. And I'm just appreciative of anybody that really reaches out, especially anybody that follows you, Brian.
Oh, thank you, my friend. Well, thank you for being here with us today. And I know there's going to be more. So, yeah. For those of you that just watched Tamara flip her lid and jump in, she told us the stories from the beginning to the end. These critical moments in her life that shaped her, that taught her lessons, that also empowered her, taught her the ability to step into her own power, her own ownership, her own voice, to advocate and protect for herself and others. And her creative outlets continued to develop in a way that now others get to benefit from it. What she's built is a byproduct of her passion for love and for people and for storytelling, but it caused her to have to look at her own stories to be able to even understand how to get there. So What she's created for herself is a life of possibility that she now gets to invite others along with, to give them experiences to be able to do the same things that she's done, but in their own way and for their own selves. It all exists for you, but it is going to require you to flip open your lid and scan your can. See you next time.
What you can probably tell by now is that I love telling these stories, but what I love even more is the impact that's coming from them. You see, we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as possible, but to do that, we need you. See, we believe that moved people move people. And so all I'm asking is if you've resonated, connected with any of the messaging, please consider commenting, sharing, leave a rating and review. Thank you so much for tuning into Flipping the Lid. And if you want more information on the show, how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or any of the other details, head over to flippingthelid.com. We'll see you there.